Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited about today's episode because I have some very special guests. I have two of our top agents for the equity team with us today and the co-team leader, Chad McMahon. So thanks for joining, guys. So before we get into it, I want to introduce you guys because the audience doesn't know you. Some people do, some don't. So Martin is the newest member of our team, and he has a really cool story. So, Martin, do you want to kind of share a little bit about how we met and how you got into real estate, moved to Sedona? And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, originally I'm from Paris and I grew up in France, and I've always been ambitious, and over there it's not really kind of the norm. So I quickly realized I wanted to build a life in the United States, and I moved to Los Angeles, where I did film production for a number of years. And over there, I learned to build teams and, go into really complicated scenarios and having to find a bunch of solutions. And that is really something that has been thrilling and fulfilling for me. And a couple of years ago, with COVID especially, I started thinking about, what it meant to create wealth for oneself. And I realized that I was a little bit too reliant on my income as a producer, and I needed to build something for the long term. And I started reading a lot of books and listening to podcasts about investing and mostly real estate. And I thought it was fascinating. And I built up a little bit of money and wanted to invest and buy my first property. And after analyzing a bunch of markets around the United States, I settled on Sedona because I loved it. My sister used to live there, and my family has been going on vacation there. And I thought, what a beautiful place to own property. And I kind of got in touch with a realtor kind of randomly, and my experience wasn't necessarily extremely satisfying because I just couldn't get a house. And that was in 2021 at the peak of the market, where houses were flying off the shelves day one, and I kept putting offers and getting outbid and getting into bidding wars, and I just couldn't understand. I didn't have enough experience of the market to really understand how that worked and why I wasn't getting a house. And then finally, actually through Chad, I met Will, and Will brought me in and was like, I'm going to be your realtor. We're going to find a house together. And just, was it like a month later after meeting, I finally was able to buy a house. And then, just that was so much fun. That was so much fun. And that got me thinking, is that something that I want to start doing a little bit more? And I was still living in Los Angeles, so I was investing, remotely. And then I ended up buying a second house just 6 months after that. And I think that second house really was a trigger, and Will helped me another time. And it was just such a score and such a beautiful house at such a great price. And, as an investor, the numbers were so amazing that I realized I should just do this full time. I should what am I doing in LA? What am I doing in film? I'm having so much fun with real estate. Sedona is gorgeous. I want to live there. And so early in 2022, I just quit my job and relocated here and joined you guys on the team, and got my license, and then started doing this full time. So I invest and I buy and sell houses for clients, and I
love it. Yeah, so cool, man. Such a cool story. It's amazing how things develop like that. So what are you working on right now? You want to talk, briefly about the project that you have and kind of what you've found your specialty to be, from film to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so it was interesting because a lot of the skills that I built in the film industry were actually translatable in the real estate industry, especially in the construction and renovation aspect, because you have to deal with a lot of people, you have to deal with a lot of numbers, and you have to deal with deadlines and, crazy situations that show up, because they like everything, there's always something that shows up that you didn't expect, and then you got to deal with it, and then you got to find a solution for it. And like years and years in Hollywood really taught me how to stay calm and composed in these moments and really deal with the people and create the best teams around finding the solution. And so in the Verde Valley, we have a huge housing crisis, and that's all around the country, right? But for us, it's even more so because we're a tiny little pocket in northern Arizona, and it is so beautiful. And now that the word got out, everybody wants to move here, but we just don't have enough houses for everyone. So, that's part of the reason why the housing market has gone up so much over here. But so my thought was, how can I build something that is of quality, but is relatively affordable so that most people could buy it and relocate here? So I bought some empty plots of land, and I got some really cool prefab houses, and I basically prepped the land, dug the trenches, poured some foundations, had the houses delivered, set, hooked up, and now I'm in the part where I'm building the stem wall, and I'm going to build all around the houses, the driveways, make the landscape, and then build some additions around it, the houses, so they don't look like prefabs so much. Because prefabs can be, just a simple like rectangular house, and if it's just standing on its own, it can look a little strange. It doesn't have as much character as a traditional site-built house has, and that's why I'm building, carports, decks, porches, sunrooms around it, just to give it a little bit more character and a little bit more texture. So I'm working on that right now. I'm about 2 months away from completion.
Man, so cool. It's great that you can, like you said, translate kind of some of those things that were used in production that are used in construction.
Yeah.
It's very similar. Managing large teams, and you also speak multiple languages. That helps. Speaking Spanish and French.
It helps. English. Yeah, a lot of people speak Spanish here.
Yeah. So that's great. Wow, so cool. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
The next person I want to introduce is Kestin, and Kestin is actually a veteran compared to all of us. I mean, he's been doing real estate for a while compared to the average agent in our office. There's a lot of new people. And, Kestin, you also have a really cool story, because you've specialized in luxury homes in Sedona. And it's been amazing to watch, because you've already closed millions of dollars of real estate this year. And I know you're working on a massive deal right now as well. So, would you mind sharing kind of your story, your background, how you got into real estate? I just think it's such a cool story, and the listeners would really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So my story started for me when I was 16, and I was up late one night. I saw an infomercial for real estate. It's talking about, all the different things you can do with it. And I was intrigued, so I purchased the book and I started reading it. And it wasn't soon after that I got a call from my aunt and uncle that they basically won the lottery. They came into this huge amount of money, and they wanted to buy real estate, and it was like, oh, this is perfect. I just bought this book and I started learning, and I was 16, almost 17 at this time. So that's when it started for me. I actually just started looking at properties online and helping them put it together. And then, so by the time I turned 18, I was like, okay, I should just get my real estate license. So I got my real estate license and started working in multiple. It was Mojave County, Maricopa County, Yavapai County were the main places we were working with real estate in. And it was an amazing experience. So it started at 18 for me. It's been 10 years now. I'll be 29 on the 19th of this month. And it's been quite the roller coaster ride, but
that is so cool, man.
Thanks. Out of all of it though, I love the luxury properties. I love the design, the architecture, the heart that goes into, I like to see the behind the scenes of, like, you can feel what somebody was thinking when they were, trying to make this come to reality. I think that's what's so cool about luxury is they're all so unique and different.
And it's not just a box or someone looking
Right.
to rent it. It's like they want epic. Like he was saying before, like a client was like, I want it to scream success. That's what I'm looking for. Go find it, Kestin. And it's such a interesting clientele that exists. So I'm just curious. I've been watching, the luxury market. I don't really play in that market as much as you do. That's kind of been your specialty, but I'm just curious, like, what are the stats? I mean, the market is, and we're going to get into some market stats in a minute, but I'm just curious, like, hey, are houses still selling in luxury market? Like, what are your clients like right now, and how, are places selling?
They definitely are selling. And in the past 3 months, we've had 20 properties close over 1.5 million. That's in Sedona. Yeah, they're still selling. There's still a market for them, and people, they're always looking for their dream home. And especially in this area, we kind of consider this like island. It's very unique and different. And some of these properties, are very special, and they take a long time to come on the market. So we have people that have been waiting for years for that. It just so happens that property just hit the market. So yeah, it's just, they're all case by case basis, but they're definitely selling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting how that works. Like in any market, that upper echelon is always going to sell. And it also seems even on the lower side, like the FHA loans or lower seems to pretty much always sell. But
Right.
It's interesting to hear your perspective that there's just a group of people just waiting for that perfect house to list. And that's, we just had a listing appointment with another team member yesterday, and I was telling them that it's a $2.5 million house, and they were worried about the market. And I'm like, look, there is a lot of people that want to buy the perfect house, and $2.5 million, it's all perspective, right? To us, it might be a lot of money, but if you have a successful business or family or whatever, it might not be that much. It might be like 250,000 of them,
No, absolutely.
So, I think it's important for listeners to understand that, especially if they're on the fence of listing their house and they have a luxury home and they think the market's not ready, the market's ready. The luxury buyers are there. So,
Absolutely. I would say out of the 20 properties that have sold the past 3 months, 7 of those were above 3 million, and some coming into 5 million. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
So cool. So talking about market stats, Martin, I think you had some market stats that you were wanting to share today. I'm curious on, average days on market, especially in Sedona. I think most people are curious about. So do you have any numbers you can share?
Yeah, and it's interesting actually because we hear about all these headlines at the national level, and when you're a buyer, when you're an investor, when you don't necessarily live here in Sedona because it's more of a tourist destination or a vacation destination, you're not necessarily aware of how the market is going here now, but you're more aware of how it is going globally as a nation, and you think, oh, everything's crashing, everything's slowing down, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the market stats, like absolute facts, average day on market in Sedona and the Verde Valley is about 80 days. And that has been stable for over a year. That's properties come on the market and it takes on average 80 days to sell. And that hasn't lowered and that hasn't heightened in the past few months that we've seen this recession. So it's actually pretty interesting because houses still sell and the good products still sell. And some of them, and some of them stay longer for sure. I just, put an offer with a client on a house that was sitting on the market for 150 days. And, but as soon as we put the offer, there was another one that came in, and then we didn't end up getting it, as strange as that sounded, it was the case. But then there was another one that we also saw with another client, and that got under contract 3 days after coming on the market. So it still happens.
So it averages now.
The good products, when it's priced right, it just goes. It just goes because people are still looking to move here. People are still looking to invest here, and people are still looking to own property here.
Yep. So it averages out. So you had that house that was 150 something days on the market, and you know, some of the reason, in our opinion, I know Chad's going to agree with this completely, is it's how did the listing agent present the house? How are the photos? How did they price it? What's the, there's things that people can do, right? So the person that did a great job, they're going to get multiple offers like, day two. Not saying that happens on every house. It depends where and a lot of other factors, but the house that they just list for sale and put a sign out front and there's like, well, we'll just put on MLS and hope for the best.
Not the photos that are
sitting.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, the photos were awful. And actually, I did not walk this property until I had a client ready to put an offer on it because I didn't even think that it was that interesting. But then I walked it for my client. I was like, whoa, it's actually really, really nice. It's just, it wasn't marketed properly. The photos didn't reflect how good of a condition it was inside. And, Sedona is a small little pocket, anywhere you are in town, it's a good location. So, and you have views, and you didn't really see that in the ad. Yeah.
So, all right, going back to what you're saying, like the nation is like kind of freaking out, right? Everyone's like, oh, the market's crashing. This is happening. I think it'd be good to share the median home price because people think prices are falling, and we hear clients say, I'm going to wait for the market to crash. And we're like, good luck. What is the median home price now, and what has it been?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's just so much fear mongering in the media that if that is the only source of information that you're going to get, you're going to think that everything is crashing and people are waiting, oh, it's going to crash even more. But when you look at the median price in Sedona, it's still over $1 million, right? And so we did retract a little bit from earlier this year. I think April 2022 was the absolute peak. And that was 1.15. So we retracted 15% from that. But early 2022 was extremely, extremely weird. And that was really the peak of the market. And when everyone was just in such a frenzy, everybody agreed, buyers, sellers, agents, everybody agreed, prices don't make sense anymore. So basically, this past 4 or 5 months, since we've seen prices decline, we've just shaved off that top that didn't make sense. And now we're back at about $1 million median price, which is where it sat most of last year. And we've been stable at that for the past 3 months. So we're just comfortably sitting at where everybody agrees is a good median price for the market, basically.
Mm-hmm. And that's great because I think there is a fallacy that people believe that houses are just going to like drop in half. Like $1 million house is going to be $500,000 and I'm going to wait for that day and I'm not going to buy until that happens. So thank you for sharing that. And one stat I saw earlier this morning when we were talking was the median home price actually went up last month. It was about 7%. So we're already gaining on that total 25% change. We had about a 7% increase last month. So it kind of reminds me of COVID times, like if like the world was ending and then everyone's like, oh wait, I want to move to Sedona. So
Right.
We're starting to see an uptick with multiple offers again, which is really interesting. But anyways, so thank you for sharing that. Our next guest, super excited, is Chad McMahon. He's the co-team leader of the equity team. And I mean, Chad's been doing real estate for at least 155 years. And so we're super happy to have him. Chad, for the listeners that don't know who you are, you need to know Chad because he is the #1 expert on short-term rentals. Even when us as a team have questions about short-term rentals for a client, or even just what's the state of the unit, what's happening right now, we always refer to Chad. So just wanted to ask some questions, Chad, because there's been some
Sure. Let him rip.
right? And it's not just what Martin was saying with, there's that fear in the market with like first-time home buyers specifically and some investors. Like what's happening with short-term rentals in Sedona right now? Because I know we had a recent election and there's been, there's always talk that they're going to stop short-term rentals or something like that. And I'd like you to give the facts to the listener so they understand how it works and what's actually happening here.
That's great. I think that the best way for me to really dive in and explain what's going on is to give a little bit, just a short history on where short-term rentals started in Sedona. How has it developed since then, and where are we likely going? So it's kind of a past, present, and future sort of.
Yeah, that's great.
So in before 2016, most people don't know this, Sedona was a 30-day minimum rental town. And in 2016, there was Arizona Senate Bill 1350 passed. And that time, the governor and those who kind of pushed this together, they said, Arizona is no longer going to be governed by the local municipalities, meaning towns and counties and all of that. Statewide, Arizona is going to be short-term rental friendly, and the towns and counties can no longer choose to restrict short-term rentals. Statewide, we're going to love them, we're going to embrace them, and the only thing that can restrict a short-term rental is going to be your homeowner association. If there are CC&Rs, codes, covenants, and restrictions that restrict those short-term rentals, and that's the only thing. So if something didn't have HOA and more to the point, didn't have CC&Rs that restrict short-term rentals, everything is fair game. Now, since then, that has not changed. It still is the same. Arizona as a state is one of the friendliest short-term rental states that there is. However, we just had elections. So now we've got a new mayor, Scott Jablow. We've got a new governor, looks like Katie Hobbs. And so things are going to change. Both of them have kind of run on their campaign as a bit anti-short-term rental. So there's a lot of concern right now. And the question is, what's going to happen? Because right now, nothing has changed. Still is the same as it's been for the last 6 years. The only other bill that's come through is Senate Bill 1168, recently passed. It was before the elections. And that one didn't restrict short-term rentals at all. It just clarified what some of the consequences are for things like repeated noise violations, which we desperately needed that. It says that, as a landlord, as an owner of a short-term rental, you have to have a certain amount of liability insurance. These are common sense things that you have to have. Give your contact info to the town, for example. So if something's going on, someone could reach you. I mean, this is basic stuff we needed to have. Places like Scottsdale, Arizona, has had a real problem with these late night crazy parties where you get, let's say something is a big luxury home with a big pool. And so let's say they rent it for $1,000 per night. And then they throw this rager party where you get like 100, 200 people that stay up until 5 a.m, screaming and pounding loud music, jumping.
That was happening. My sister, her next door neighbor was a Airbnb, and she said one night the DJ was literally on the roof with lights and speakers on the roof. Super dangerous.
Oh my God.
A pool party. Of course, they called the cops, and it was a mess. So it was definitely needed for Scottsdale on the party.
That's right. And I read an article about one party in particular where there were so many cars along this residential street that there was actually an emergency where someone in half a block down called for an ambulance. They're having a health problem. The ambulance could not get to them. I mean, there were just this. It was like the funnel of the street was clogged with these cars, and it's terrible. And even that aside, you think about the people that have lived in the homes for 30 years, even 1 year, it doesn't matter how long. So let's say they live there for a month, but then, they can't sleep at night. They've got these crazy parties. It's not fair. So there needs to be a solution. And that Senate Bill 1168 was a very good thing. And I'm really glad that passed. So moving forward, the question is, what kind of short-term rental restrictions are we going to have? There was an attempt at a House Bill 2711, and that one did not pass. That one would have restricted short-term rentals if it went through, based on percentage of housing units and how many short-term rentals are allowed. That one did not go through. Granted, this is all pre-politics. So Couple things that I am aware of. One is that Katie Hobbs, she's on her platform of getting elected. What she said is she really wants those towns, those counties, to regain the control that they used to have pre-2016. The new mayor in Sedona, Scott Jablow, he's not a big fan of short-term rentals. He feels that they have their place, and he's not really saying that we should get rid of short-term rentals. He's saying they should be restricted. So this talk is going on. Does that mean that short-term rentals are A, let's explore the options. A, are they going away? B, are they going to stay the same? Or C, are there going to be less of them? And so the most likely outcome, and this is based on common sense, this is based on what's normal in Arizona, what's normal across most of the nation as far as how big changes are handled. Usually these things are grandfathered in. And the reason why is that someone buys a home, they start renting it out. Let's say it was a $2 million home. Let's say it was in Kestin's wheelhouse, and it's going to be a short-term rental. So that's a lot of money. And so they buy this home, they furnish it, they remodel it, they do all this stuff. Let's say they put 2.5 into it or whatever it is, a lot of money. And let's say that's either all they have or they've got $1 billion. It really doesn't matter, but they put all that into it. And then let's say the state, the city, whatever it is, says, oh, you can't do that anymore. Well, what happens is you see a lot of lawsuits. So does this mean that it's guaranteed it's going to be grandfathered in? No, of course not. And I don't tell any clients, don't worry, it's going to be grandfathered in. I don't say that. What I do say is that it probably will be grandfathered in, but we don't know. And when it comes to my own investments, I'm not concerned because I know that there are multiple exit strategies that you can use if the worst happens. So my expectation is that short-term rentals will be grandfathered in. I think a likely outcome is based on the percentage of properties right now in Sedona that are short-term rentals, which is a high percentage. Right now, we've got just over 5,000 housing units, which is what the city calls anything from manufactured homes to condos, townhomes, single-family homes, et cetera. Anything that you can live in that's legal, not a shed or a tent or yurt or something like that, or cave.
We have those.
Yeah, we have some of them too. But the ones that are legal and they're allowed, we have over 5,000 housing units, and we've got something like 35% or more of those right now, about that number, that are short-term rentals. It's a very high percentage. The percentage that the city's more comfortable with is around 15%. So we're way over that. My best guess of what's going to happen is they're probably going to cap the short-term rentals. And if it's already a short-term rental, you stay a short-term rental. But when you sell your property, it's not going to convey to the new owner and whoever has the property until they reach that number. That's the comfortable number. Mm-hmm. So that's my best guess as to what's going on. And again, I'm not concerned about my own investments, because I know that you can of course, everyone thinks of this, you can sell it. B, you can do a 30-day minimum rental and keep it furnished and keep the rates high. Usually you take a little bit of a hit on the income when you do that, but you can still get positive cash flow there in a worst case scenario. C, you go with a long-term rental. You can even pull out the furnishings. Now the tenant is responsible for all the utilities. You can liquidate the furnishings, or you can keep them in and charge more, whatever you want to do. That's usually more of a break-even approach right now with the current market, but I do expect things to get better. And if that kind of thing happens where they say, sorry, no exceptions, 30-day minimum on rentals, let's say they go back to that. Well, if more people are doing 30-day minimums on the rentals, it will become the new normal, which means that people that want to stay there, they're going to expect that, and that's all they're going to find. So they say, okay, guess what? We're going and staying for a month in Sedona. So that is what I see happening. And that's kind of my prediction based on the history of what's happened and kind of what Katie Hobbs and Scott Jablow have been talking about.
Yeah, that's really good information because, again, not letting the market and the fear of the market dictate your decisions, especially your investments. Most of our clients are very savvy investors and they understand this. They ask the right questions. So you know, I think you're spot on. I mean, obviously we're kind of guessing at this point, but we're all heavily involved in this subject matter and speak with the mayors and the that we're running and city council, affordable housing committee. We've had these conversations and we understand what they're leading towards. And there was a meeting recently that they talked about kind of copying what Scottsdale did, just a little more. We need to kind of regulate it a little bit, which we're not against. I think some of those things can be good, like the emergency contact, smoke alarms, what was the other one? Fire safety map was something I saw, like in the bedrooms, just remind you, because you're in this new house, you don't even remember where the front door is. Yeah. So it's good to have those maps in there that say, hey, the exit's this way. I'm not against stuff like that. I think that's good. We do need some kind of direction, just not a flat, you can't do it anymore. Like, that approach isn't going to work because, the people that own short-term rentals are typically savvy investors, and you don't want 2,000 wealthy, savvy investors suing you. It's a class action on steroids. So I think city council is hyper aware of that this is a luxury area, and people that can afford to buy a short-term rental and do short-term rental probably have deep pockets that they don't want to poke the bear. So we'll see what happens. I think the best thing we can all do is just stay educated, follow the different bills that are coming through and stick to the facts. Because even if something tries to push through, there's pushback, right? Look what happened in Paradise Valley. They tried to just be like, can't do it. And then everyone's like, whoa, I bought this $3 million house to do this. And you have, the richest people in Arizona living in Paradise Valley. And they're like, no. And they immediately pushed it back, and they're like, yeah, we're sorry, that was a little too strict. Let's come to a happy medium. So yeah, I think Sedona is aware of that situation in Paradise Valley too, because that's pretty fresh. That happened this year. Yeah. But yeah, great info, guys. Like really good. This is such a great call, and thank you so much for joining. We're gonna be doing this probably every week or so, maybe every 10 days, and just kind of give you guys a little market update on Sedona, the Verde Valley, and all that stuff. So, stay tuned, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. All right. Thanks. See you guys.
It's awesome.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.